Welcome to Insane Ambition, a business and tech show breaking down lessons and playbooks from the world's most ambitious founders, investors, researchers, and changemakers.
We'd like to thank Melbourne Connect Co-working, Melbourne's most innovative co-working space, for proudly sponsoring this episode. And with that being said, we hope you find this one valuable.
So, I suppose it's quite an interesting feeling that I have right now, because I'm sitting across from quite an iconic character. Someone who is the founder, the original founder, one of one of the most iconic shoe brands in the world, Reebok. So, Joe, I want to get a sense of a holistic understanding about your journey, just from how you grew up to how you fell into entrepreneurship and how you created one of the world's most iconic brands. So maybe we can start with, where you grew up.
Where I grew up?
Yeah.
Well, in England, north of England. North of England, I guess most people know Manchester. We were about 10 miles north of Manchester. And born 1935, 4 years later, 1939, we had World War II. So I don't remember too much before that, but I do remember that in 1939, all the lights went out. We can't have any street lights. You had blinds up. I guess in the early days, they didn't expect too much from bombing, but it soon started. And being near to Manchester was a target, which for us, well, I guess we got the odd stray bomb. I know one of the odd stray bombs dropped near the shoe factory, J.W. Foster's, which was the family business, J.W. Foster's was. And it blew the windows in. And I do remember on that occasion, my father said he didn't bother opening the front door, he just walked in through the window. But that's sort of the early start. And, 5 years later, the war was over. The lights came on. And we started to get educated again, because anybody who was a teacher, of course, most of the men, they just went off to war, so there was no schooling. A bit of homeschooling, mother did the best she could, of course. But anyway, at 10 years old, 1945, we started getting schooling again. And, just normal.
Yeah.
During the war was amazing in a way, because with no lights, no street lights, can you imagine? No street lights.
Yeah, I suppose it'd be quite difficult, right?
Yeah, and we had double summertime.
Yeah.
So in summer, it didn't go dark till well after 11 p.m. So we could, as kids, you don't know what a war is.
Yeah.
You just know something odd is happening, but you just go out there and play out. So we'd be out in the streets, and when it did go dark, especially in winter when it went dark, of course, went dark early and no lights on. So it was quite an interesting time. However, the lights came on again in 1945. We started getting educated. 15, I went to college. I went to an engineering college, so I studied engineering. I left that at 17 years old, and then I joined the family business.
So family full of shoemakers, is that correct?
Athletic shoemakers.
Athletic shoemakers.
Because in 1895, if I can go back to that, my grandfather had invented the spike running shoe. He was a member of his local athletic club, and his grandfather was a cobbler.
Sure.
And also, as a cobbler, he repaired cricket boots in Nottingham. And my grandfather used to go down to see his grandfather and ask the question, why have you got spikes in the bottom of cricket boots? The obvious answer, they're on grass, they don't want to slip. Spikes, that'll stop them from slipping. And I think that gave him his idea, because he, as a member of his local athletic club, why don't I make a pair of shoes and put spikes in the bottom? Because although my grandfather's father was in confectionery. He didn't want to go in confectionery. He liked what his grandfather was doing. He liked to be a cobbler. And as a cobbler, he started to make shoes as well. So he made his own running shoes, put spikes in the bottom, and came a very unlikely second in the next race he had, which was rather annoying to his sort of fellow clubmates, because he wasn't a brilliant runner. He just enjoyed it and would normally end up halfway down the field. Sure. But to come second has sort of invited a few sort of funny stares. What have you got on? What's these shoes? And
so this would have been a fairly large shift in what people were wearing on their feet at the time during athletic sports.
Well, it changed the sport. It changed the sport to put spikes in the bottom. I think few people used to put nails in the bottom or sort of studs in, like army studs and stuff like that, to give them some grip. But these were real spikes. There was something different. So it was a game changer. But it was also the start of his business, because everyone said, "Look, Joe, we need some of those shoes," and that was it.
Yeah.
So he started his business.
So this is your grandfather?
My grandfather. And by 1904, he had 3 world records.
Wow.
In 1908, he had 2 gold medals.
Incredible.
So that was it. And, of course, he went on into the 20s. That was his real belle epoque. That was his decade, really. You heard of Chariots of Fire?
Yes.
The film? The athletes, Harold Abraham, Eric Liddell, and Lloyd Burley, particularly Eric Liddell and Harold Abraham, they were immortalised in that film. They won their gold medals wearing my grandfather's shoes.
Wow.
So that was his claim to fame. 1933 he died, and I wasn't born until 1935.
So you never got to interact with your grandfather?
No, but I was born on his birthday.
Which is why you're named Joe.
Which is why I'm named Joe.
Incredible.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had his name. My grandmother absolutely insisted I'd brought my name with me.
Yeah, and then you led off the legacy, I suppose.
Well, it took a bit of time.
Just a more modest amount of work.
Yeah, you're not really interested in work or in making running shoes. Really, we were not that interested. We didn't know much about grandfather. That's Jeff and myself. Jeff was 2 years old.
Did a lot of your family speak about your grandfather?
Nobody really spoke about him. I guess in those days, it's not. We look now at athletic and performance as something great, but in those days it was just sort of, well, if you want to be part of a running club and do running. I mean, was it 1896 when the first Olympic Games was? I think it's 1896. So really, the Olympic Games were nothing really big in those days. It was something new which you just started. I mean, now it's massive. It's absolutely, one of the events you look forward to once every 4 years. In those days, it was something new. I guess you might say something like pickleball now.
Sure.
Pickleball might become, Grand Slams of pickleball in years to come. Who knows? It's the fastest growing sport at the moment in America, so who knows? But in those days, so yes, making running shoes, running spikes, it was a change. But athletics, people watched athletics. It was something to watch, but I don't think it was really sort of what people would say they spent a great deal of time thinking about.
So I want to break down how you kind of came about entering into that space, like the shoemaking space, because it seems like your grandfather kind of initiated, or his father did, and then I'm assuming your father took over your grandfather's business at some point?
Absolutely. In 1933, when my grandfather died, his 2 sons, my uncle and father, they took over the business. And by that time, they were well known globally, and particularly they were known in what in those days was the Empire. It was still the Empire in that time. We never Commonwealth, as you would expect. Australia, Canada, India, these were his markets, and so he was well known. But his sons, they just took over a company. They didn't take over that spirit that really got my grandfather into it.
But do you know why your grandfather started the company?
Well, I thought I told you how he started the company.
No, but I'm also meant from a motivation standpoint, right?
Well, he was a cobbler,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much motivation it is because all the athletes wanted a pair of spike shoes.
Yeah.
So it was a natural thing.
Yeah.
Okay, he could make spike shoes, so his customers were there.
Yeah, I suppose he innovated and then realized there was a market
Yeah.
for it.
That was it.
Yeah.
All his club mates were all his customers, and then of course the next town and the next town, because athletics in those days was really just track and field, a bit of cross country, but really it was track and field. So they had events at different times. So his business was just grew organically. It was really there for him, and motivation. I suppose his main motivation was the fact that he liked running. He was an athlete. He liked it. So.
Built in his own space.
That's right. That's right. If you can build a business, something you love doing. Then
So contrast that now with like your father, how he took over the business.
Yeah, my father wasn't really a runner. My uncle did a bit because they were in the family, but really neither of them were that sort of part of, we'll say, athletics or part of the running scene. So as such, it was a business. And by that time, it was a reasonable-sized business. They were selling their product around the world, and in particular to the Commonwealth, or as we said, the empire still is still an empire at that point. So that was his business. And unfortunately, when my father and uncle took over, they took over a working business.
Yep.
I mean, they also, apart from that, by that time, he was making football boots, or soccer boots, rugby, boxing.
Yeah.
In other words, he had a whole range of athletics footwear. And he supplied most of, I would say, 95% of the football teams that we now know in the UK. We'll say Man City, Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, all those. My grandfather supplied with boots and training shoes. And by the time Jeff and myself came into the business, 90% of that 95% had been lost.
Wow.
Because Adidas had come into the market, and my father and uncle had not seen this as something that would take their business away.
Sure. Suppose they saw themselves as independent, but then if innovators come into a market and make it competitive once again, right?
Yeah, I don't think they saw that there was any competition there because they hadn't had competition for so long that they didn't expect competition. And the thing is, they didn't react to it. You know, they didn't think, oh, just a minute, we've got to start thinking.
Sure.
Because they could have retained that business, but they didn't. They didn't have any salesmen. It was just word of mouth and advertising in magazines and things like that. That was their business. And at 18, I'd been in the business for 12 months. My brother had been in it for about 4 years because he left school at 15 and went into the business. So he'd been in there quite some time. But we both went off almost at the same time to do national service, which was 2 years of national service. So we were away from the country for 2 years. And that was a good thing because it taught us discipline.
Yeah, I was going to ask how the national service maybe changed your perception of what you wanted in your future.
I don't suppose at that time I knew what I wanted. Yeah, it was like I'd spent 12 months in the business, but at 17, getting to 18, we're more interested in social life. Girls dancing, doing whatever. I was playing badminton. So more looking at the social things in life. And it's only after coming back, after 2 years away, we came back and we saw a failing company. We could recognise the company. It wasn't the company my grandfather had made, or maybe it was, but it hadn't moved on from the 1920s and 30s. They were still making the same shoes they'd been making in the 30s. Because during the war, they had to turn to other things, repairing army boots, and they made sandals and things like that, because there was no demand for spike running shoes.
Yeah.
And the sport was quite small, really, if you can think of it, just after the war. Football was probably the biggest thing, and football grew. I think track and field was reasonable, but never really grew that much. So when Adidas came in, they took away a good part of the Foster's business.
Interesting. So I'm assuming when you came back from service, you recognizing that the business had fallen behind the eight ball, maybe picked up on what could be done in a beneficial way for the business?
I think in simple terms, it was, and I did approach my father and say, "Look, Dad, we've got to do something here. This business is it's sort of going down. It's failing. We need to look at our competitors and do something."
Did he take you seriously?
Not really, because all he said, "Well, look, Joe, when I'm gone and your uncle's gone, this company will be yours. You can do what you like with it.
If there's anything left, right?"
Well, as I said to my dad, I said, "Look, Dad, first thing is we don't want you to go.
Yeah,
That's not part of the plan.
Yeah.
But this business, this company will be gone long before you are. It's dying." He didn't take any notice. And I guess Jeff and myself, we sort of thought a lot about it and thought, well, if this business goes, what do we do? So we're not driven by the fact that we wanted to build a better company. We needed a living. We had to think, this is how we make our living. We're not going to be able to do that if this goes out of business. So we decided to go to college. We went to shoe college and we learned about shoes. But I guess this is one of the lessons that people have picked up out of my book. What really happened is that we made a lot of friends. All the people there, teachers, other people who were there from attending college, and were all involved in footwear. So we made an awful lot of friends, which when we decided that we were going to leave the family business, okay, where did we get this from? Where do we get this leather from? Who makes shoe lasts? What about the shoe machinery? And we got answers.
I suppose you had the network, right?
Yeah, that's right. We had this network. That was really good networking for us, and we knew how to make patterns. We could if we didn't, somebody did, and we could always get somebody to do that. So that was really, really helpful. Having gone to college, that was really helpful when we did decide to step out and set up our own business, which we did, and we set up in the next town, Bury, which we are Bolton based really, and even Reebok is known to be from Bolton, but we went into the next town, Bury, because we didn't want to compete on those. Plus the fact what we learned is that the shoemaking industry was in Rossendale Valley, which is where the college was.
Sure.
And at the bottom of Rossendale Valley was Bury, so it was near to it. So there was more of a pool of workers that we could pick from.
Sure.
And so when we moved to the next town, we actually rented out an old brewery, which I don't know if you read the book. If not,
I've touched on it a couple of times.
Yeah. And the old brewery, it was a very old building. The top floor was useless for us because the roof leaked so much.
Yeah.
We had probably up to 50 cans and buckets just to catch the water from the roof. And the landlord didn't want to repair his roof, and we didn't have any money, so we were on the floor down. The bottom floor, for whatever reason, had no windows.
Blown out from the war, never repaired.
Well, I don't know. I think it's something to do with the brewing business. Maybe something that they don't need windows, or the windows would spoil something.
Interesting.
So they didn't have any windows. So we're on the second floor, and unfortunately, again, whilst the top floor was unusual, the second floor was a bit dodgy. It sort of bounced up and down because of machinery in there.
Yep.
So we placed our machinery around the edges so that we wouldn't
disrupt the floor.
Really challenge the floor too much.
Interesting.
And but it was good, and we started our business, and that was the start of Mercury Sports Footwear.
Mm-hmm. So that I'm just trying to align timelines here. Your father's company was still existent when you started Mercury. Is that correct?
It was still working.
Like it was still they were still working.
Yeah,
right?
they were still working. They still made it. So we moved to the next town not to be competitors.
What did your father think of that?
Well, he didn't speak to me for about 2 years.
Mm-hmm. And was that because of the competition you were presenting him?
Mainly because I was blamed. My brother, he probably wasn't as I could say willing to discuss this with father. He didn't create the problem.
Less confrontation.
That's right. I was the one that was confronting and saying, look, we should be doing it. I was also married. My brother wasn't, even though he was older. So he was still living at home. Mm-hmm. He was still living with mother and father.
I suppose he doesn't want to upset his father, get kicked out.
That's right. So he wasn't too sort of difficult to live with.
Yeah.
But I was, and it took about 2 years, to say, for that to get over that. But he did eventually, because 18 months after we left, indeed, my uncle did die.
Okay.
And also the local authority decided they needed that space where the shop was, where the factory was. They needed that space for what is now the University of Bolton. So they knocked it down. So it was at that time my father decided to stop manufacturing. We had left, and by that time we'd got a reputation. And we'd also got our problems.
In what way? So reputation, good and bad?
No, our reputation was good, but our problem was the fact that the accountant who said, Joe, you're doing pretty good. You're making money. You better register your name. And Mercury, okay, we'll register Mercury. We didn't know we need to do that, because if it's your name, you don't need to register your name. But if you're using a name like Mercury, you've got to register it. We realised why. We said, well, if somebody else decides that seems like a good name, we'll start making Mercury shoes, and then you've got a problem. And so he sent me to a patent agent in Manchester, and who obviously worked with the registrar, and he told us that unfortunately Mercury was already registered for footwear.
For footwear as well, specifically?
Yeah, for footwear in particular, because that's where we would have to register. For footwear, it was already registered by Lotus and Delta, who were part of British Shoe Corporation, and British Shoe Corporation were massive.
Incredibly large, yeah.
They offered it to us for £1,000.
That's not too bad. I guess like going back in the 80s, it's a lot, but...
Well, you're going back to the 50s, late 50s,
yeah. Even 50, even earlier.
In fact, it was 1960, spot on 1960.
So what would that equivalent be? Like 50K or something at least?
Probably something like that. But we just set up a factory for £250. We bought our machinery for £10 here, £20 there. £250, we had a factory. We couldn't afford £1,000 to buy a name.
Yeah.
That was impossible.
So this is where the story of Reebok came, right? How did you discover that name?
Well, I mean, that in itself is quite a decent story, because as I say, I went to the agent and I said, no, we haven't got £1,000. So he said, you got to get another name then. And it was a nice day in May, and his window was open. He pointed through the window and he said, you need a name like that, Kodak. And I'm saying, what's with Kodak? Well, he said, it's their name. They made it up. You can make a name up. It's yours. That's it. People can't dispute it. Maybe if it's too close phonetically, you might get a dispute, but just make a name up. I said, but don't bring me one. Bring me 10.
Sure.
What?
Yeah.
10 names? Where do you get? I said, look, we got to be in love with this. I don't know if we can do that. Anyway, I went back. We sit around the table, Jeff, myself, our wives, and names are popping up. Cougar Sports, that's pretty good, why not? On the list. Falcon Sports. So we're going down this route, animals, birds, prey, and whatever. Let me take you back now to 1943. 1943, I'm 8 years old. You need to add that up and you find out where I am now. But I was 8 years old, and just like COVID, during the war, nobody could go anywhere. Nothing was happening except local events.
Sure.
And I was entered into a local event, a 60-yard race, and I won the race. I had the advantage of Foster Spikes running shoes. And if you can imagine how many kids my age had spike running shoes probably in 1943.
Yeah.
0. That's right. So maybe I had a bit of an advantage there.
Prime athlete.
That's right. But I won. I won the event, and I go up to collect my prize. And what do I get? I get a dictionary. An American Webster's dictionary. And I'm saying, look, guys, where's the football?
Yeah. Wins an athletic sporting event.
Yeah,
ends up
where's
with
the
a dictionary.
Yeah.
They're like, maybe you should study a little bit more. You know, like,
That's right. Yeah, but it's an American dictionary, and
Yeah.
a lot of spellings are just that slight difference. They miss the U out in labour and colour and things like that. And maybe I could have kicked it around a bit, but it wouldn't come back, I'm sure, like a ball would. But anyway, I was a bit disgusted with that. So I think the dictionary was sort of put or thrown into a corner for some time. But we're fast forward now, 60, in business, and my dictionary, my Webster's dictionary, is sat there on the bench. So I opened the dictionary. I like the letter R. No reason why.
Yeah.
I just like it. And I opened it at R and start thumbing through. And it's not long before you get to R-E, R-E-E-B-O-K. What's that? Well, it's a small South African gazelle. We're a running company. Gazelle.
Gazelles are fast. Yeah.
Wow, that fits. Top of the list. That went top of the list, and I took 10 names. I can't remember most of those names, but I took those back to the agent. And I said to him, look, we've got to be in love with this.
Yeah.
And we're already in love with this, Reebok.
Yeah.
Oh, but he's a lawyer. It's like, okay, Joe, we'll see what we can do. Took 2 weeks because you've got to go to the register and check everything. And he came back on the telephone and he said, Joe, you've got your wish. You can have Reebok. One caveat, the registrar says if somebody makes shoes out of Reebok skin, you can't stop them. And that'll never happen. That's never going to happen. No, that'll never happen. Okay, you can have Reebok, but because of the fact that if somebody did make out of Reebok skin, we're going to put you in Part B of the register. Part B of a month earlier, we didn't even know there was a register. So what's the difference? So we've got a name. So we're in Part B of the register. It was 10 years later when they came back and said, we moved you to the A section of the register. And I said, why is that? Well, I said, now everybody knows Reebok is a sports shoe.
Sure. So you built the brand then, right?
Yeah.
I suppose it's interesting because at that time, were you really thinking about how iconic a name like Reebok would be? Or did you just like the vibe of the name?
We just liked the name and the connection with an animal that was a gazelle. And by that time, we were doing nicely. So it's like, okay, we're doing all right. Let's push it a little bit further. We were now getting a bit sort of excited because we'd found our way how to sell our products as well. In my early days selling, I would get in the car. Well, there's two ways. The first time we did selling, we were so concerned that we didn't want to cross Foster's, that instead of making running shoes, we started making cycle shoes. Jack was a cyclist, and we picked up an agent in London and a local agent. The local agent was really a cyclist, and what he did, he went out training, put a bag on his back and put some shoes in, and would go out training and call on cycle shops. Yeah. And he was okay. The guy in London, I don't know, he must have been a tremendous salesman because all of a sudden from sort of 2 or 3 pairs, we'd be getting orders for 50 pairs, and our business just expanded in cycling.
Interesting.
Until about 18 months later, or maybe less than 18 months later, the orders just stopped. And you can imagine, nobody had mobile phones. And he was a Scotsman living in lodgings in London. So we couldn't really contact him apart from letters. And it was, we wondered what had happened, and it was 3 weeks after this complete stop of orders that we got a letter from his landlady to say that he'd been killed in a motor car. And did we owe him any money because he owed rent. So that was the end of our cycle business, virtually. in between that time, when we had started to move into running, and Jeff was an athlete. He loved running.
Yeah.
He loved cycling. That's why we was cycling. Yeah. So we'd moved into running shoes, and cycling was the market was more distant, whereas with running, every town had a running club. So our local town, Bury and Ratcliffe and Bolton, we knew all the athletes. Mm-hmm. So our business was growing that way as well. And I decided I would go and see sports shops. So I'd get in the car and go to sports shops and say, here I am, this is my product. And they were usually run by an ex-footballer or some ex-sportsman, and that was it. And they were only small shops. They sold everything. And I go in and put my product out there and, nice product, yes. Why do I need Reebok? Why do you need Reebok? So I've got Adidas, I've got Dunlop. Why do I need Reebok? And I got that a few times. And it dawned on me they didn't need Reebok. These were not my customers. They were in between. My customers were the athletes, the runners. And I found out that the 3As, the Amateur Athletic Association, all these clubs were affiliated to the 3As. And the 3As produced a handbook with the name and address of every secretary of every club in the country. That was it.
Yeah.
A letter. So I sent a letter out offering 15%, and if somebody wanted to be an agent for us, they could have a 15%. I got over 100 agents from just one letter. Of course, that meant very shortly another letter went out until we got about 300 agents. And that covered most of the country, most of the athletes.
Yeah.
And we virtually off that, we became the number one athletic shoe supplier in the UK.
And what year was this at?
What year would be? This would be in mid-60s.
Mid-60s. Yeah. Interesting.
Probably early to mid-60s.
Yeah. Now, we talk a lot about business and entrepreneurship, but to build the future, you need people and a place to build from.
Discover the perfect workspace for collaboration and productivity. Melbourne Connect Co-working is offering our viewers an exclusive 25% discount on 12-month memberships when you quote ambition in your inquiry. Links are available in the description below.
So I'm curious then, like, let's talk more holistically about like building brand, right? What you think the major aspects are that allowed for Reebok to stand out as a brand. Like what?
I think ownership is what really does that. And by that is probably up to maybe 10 minutes ago, you didn't know Joe Foster was the founder of Reebok. Yeah, and not many people knew Joe Foster was a founder because I found it with my brother. Yeah. Because everything we did was for Reebok. It was all Reebok. Yeah. So hyper-focused. I think it's repetition. Just keep that name in people's faces. And I think if you do that, I mean, you get so many people tell you about brands, don't mess around with your brand, don't change this, don't change that. And I think what we learned reasonably early is that, yes, in order to get your recognition, you need something that people can remember. One of the people that worked for Foster's was a guy called Norman Walsh. And I don't know if you've heard of Walsh or Norman Walsh.
No, I haven't.
No. Right. Foster's used to do handmade shoes or hand-sewn shoes, and they made machine-made shoes or machine-sewn shoes. And Norman was one of the people who did the hand-sewing. And when the company closed, he left, and he started up his own company. But he started up under the name of Norman Walsh. We didn't start up under the name of Foster Brothers because Jade had been Foster, that would have been competition. So in a sense, we sort of stumbled into the fact we needed a name, whereas Norman Walsh, and he did nicely, but he was a one-man band and he had a couple of people working for him. And Norman Walsh, but he died and, okay, the brand is still going. Somebody did buy the brand, but it's only a very small brand. And I think also with a brand, you need a name, or it's better to have a name that is easy to say, that people remember. And as with Reebok, 2 syllables.
Yep.
I think Mercury would have been okay, but we're on 3 syllables there. Yes.
Something that comes off the tongue,
yeah.
simple enough.
It doesn't like Reebok. I mean, even now, the stadium, the football stadium, was named after. We did the naming rights to the Reebok stadium, and although we did 15 years and it's well over 25 years now, certainly 10 years Reebok hasn't been there. Everybody still calls it the Reebok.
Yeah.
Not just the stadium, but also the shopping centre nearby is all called the Reebok. So it's something which is easy and simple, and people. You need people to remember that. So it's continuing to push the name. And I guess by the time we were number 1 in athletics, our name was pretty well known. But again, not universally known. That didn't happen until running itself. This is the best part about it. Is that late 60s, running in America started off, became something.
Yeah.
By 1970, it really had grown and grown big. And by 1979, it was massive. So during the 70s, the late 60s and the 70s, running grew. And so what grew there, our name would grow in it because we were making shoes. It's not spike shoes by that time, they're road shoes, they're training shoes. And as training shoe, again, we became the biggest, even though Nike were knocking on the door, and so were Adidas. But Adidas tended to be more involved in football or soccer. They were more involved in that than in running. So running was growing, soccer was a certain, well, really, they sold training shoes for soccer and they became street. So Adidas became street with training shoes. We became street with the running scene.
Do you think people wore different types of shoes, like different brands of shoes, because they wanted to be like the athletes that wore them?
Well, now that question is, what do you think about influencers?
Yeah.
And let me take you back to my grandfather. To get his 4 world records, he gave his shoes so the people he knew would win races. And although he might not have considered the word influence, and the influencers, that word wasn't out in those days, but he was an influencer. He knew what influencers were. And that has been the way that brands have also grown their identity by using influencers. And Adidas, of course, are big in soccer. They also used to supply athletes because they did a lot of work on the Olympics. But in the running market, which is not Olympics, the running market is a separate market. So in the running market, they were not really that big. And I don't know why they didn't look at it more, but they didn't. Excuse me.
No worries.
Yeah. That became Nike. That's where Nike grew.
So at the time when you had Adidas and Nike and all these other competitors in the market competing with Reebok, how did you navigate that competition?
Well, once we got to the point of being number 1 in running, we thought, well, what do we do next? Do we add more product? In other words, do we fight the football and soccer game, or do we increase our territory? Do we go to Europe, 400 million people in Europe? Or do we go to America, 300 million, 350 million people in America? Well, we knew because Foster's had sold shoes to America, and we knew that every college, every university had Coach, and Coach was God. That was it. And athletics, and we'd seen the running market. Let's go to America. However, let me take you to the point of my father and uncle. Why did the business fail? Because they were feuding. They didn't get on. They just couldn't. They didn't talk with each other. So there was no way of them sitting down to grow that business. So when Jeff and I left, there were only 2 years difference between us. Father and uncle had 5 years difference. 2 years. But we were friends. But the interesting thing was, as I said, I did more talking. I was the one that did more challenging. So we worked in the factory together, and we realised we needed to start developing our marketing, developing the brand. And so Jeff loved the factory. He just loved it. I didn't. That wasn't my place to be. So we came to the arrangement. Jeff, you look after the factory, and I'll do everything else. So, and we did that in buildings. I had an office then. We actually set up a new company and called it, because the footwear factory was called Reebok Sports Limited, and we set up Reebok International because that's what we wanted to be. Yep. We needed to go international, and so I looked after all the marketing and did all the travelling. And I'm suggesting we go to America because that's going to Europe. 27 languages, cultures, difficult to get. Plus the fact I did some Puma. That was the lion's den. True. Why do you go and jump in the lion's den? Let's go round about and go.
So who were the competitors in America at the time?
Well, at the time, they were trying to make the way. Adidas and Puma were making the way into America. Adidas were quite reasonable in America, but running had started with Nike, New Balance, Etonic, Brooks, Saucony. Yep. There were a lot of brands in America, but again, they were young brands. There were brands trying to make their way in, but the market was expanding tremendously. It was just going year after year. It was bigger and bigger, and so plus the fact the Americans had much more money than the Europeans, so disposable income was a big thing. I think the nearest one to America would be Japan and then Germany, and they were about 25 against 100. Put America at 100, they're about 25. So the comparison was, let's go to America. The only trouble is that the family didn't think that we had enough money to start running around America. So by luck, I'm reading a magazine called Eurosport. And in this magazine, the British government are advertising. And they're advertising for us they wanted us to export to America in particular. And they were willing to pay for a stand at the NSGA show. The NSGA is the National Sporting Goods of America. They would pay for a stand. They would pay for our return airfare. And they would also pay 50% of the hotel bills and whatever it cost you to be out there. So it was cheaper for me to go to America and stay at home almost. So I had no opposition at that time, and we're talking about 1968. So 1968 is my first trip. I go to the NSGA show, which is in Chicago, in February. And if you've ever been to Chicago or you've been to North America, in February, it's not the nicest or warmest place to be. It was freezing, the coldest I've ever been. And the guys liked the product. I got the product. I liked it. I'd also gone with a friend who he had outdoor shops, and we were making a climbing boot for him. So he came along to sell the climbing boots. We sold some climbing boots, but we didn't sell any running shoes. And the main reason was, love your product, where do we get it? And I'm saying England. And they're saying, is that New England? No, not New England, across the water. Oh, near London. That's right, near London, yeah. Big problem. Nobody wanted to do the importing. Lesson, I needed a distributor.
Yeah.
Attempts, many. When did I get into America? 1979.
Wow.
11 years.
11 years it took.
Took me 11 years. And the next question that people will say, how did you manage to stick that for 11 years?
Yeah, I mean, you were already in it for a fair amount of time as well.
Yeah, we'd already been there for a while, and now I'm.
So then 11 more years is.
Yeah. But our other markets were doing all right. We were, it's not as though we were doing badly, but 11 years, and it was the reason. The reason that we got in after 11 years was that for 10 years we've been pushing hard. I had 6 failed attempts, 6 distributors. I picked them up.
Yep.
We tried, and they all failed. But Runner's World. Runner's World was a magazine. The magazine had started off as a single page in the late 60s. And by the mid to late 70s, it was a 60 or 70 page full colour magazine telling you everything. It told you everything about running, where the next races would be, who would run at other races, and it would print the names of people. So it was a magazine everybody in America was buying. Anybody was going out running, and there were millions of people running. Bob Anderson, who we actually went to see Bob Anderson at his place in San Francisco, but he decided that he would tell everybody which was the number one running shoe. Okay, it wouldn't be Reebok because we were hardly in America. So, of course, it was Nike. Mm-hmm. And so many million runners, seeing this as number one, we want that shoe.
Of course.
Problem? Yes, big problem. Big problem, because Phil Knight is bringing his shoes in from Asia. And when he put his orders in, instead of sort of, I'll have 1 million shoe, he wanted 10 million. No. This just couldn't turn the tap on that quick. Just didn't happen.
Yeah.
A year later, Bob Anderson changed it. It may have been New Balance. I forget who the second one was. Maybe it's whatever. But anyway, it wasn't Nike. It wasn't Reebok. Same thing. The shoes were coming in from the Far East. Couldn't get the product. Third year, Bob Anderson decided, well, I think somebody had more or less told him, you've got to change this. So he changed it to star ratings. So 5 stars were the best shoes and downwards. And it was that time we thought, yeah, we could do a 5-star shoe. We know our business. We know exactly what it is, what they're making out there. We can do that. And so that was the challenge. And I went in 1979 to the NSGA show, my 11th show. And got to keep going. And running was getting that big that even without getting five stars, came along to the stand and said, we want 20,000 pairs. Right. We knew if we got a big order, we couldn't satisfy that.
Sure.
Because they also said we need a better price.
Yeah.
And we'd also been, because everybody was going to South Korea or Asia, that we'd already looked to somebody and got somebody in line for the possibility that we would get a big order. So that was right, 20,000 pairs. And then another guy came on the stand towards the end of the show, a guy called Paul Feynman. And Paul and his brother-in-law, they were running this company called Boston Camping, which again was an outdoor company. Tents, ground sheets, you name it, bags and all that stuff. And he said, Joe, we'd talked about 5 stars. So you get 5 stars and I'd love to be a distributor. Okay. So this is February. I go back to America in May to go and see Kmart, see what they're like. And you can look out here to your office. There must have been the best part of 100 buyers.
Yeah.
All buying the different stuff that Kmart wants. And mine was a sort of a 6th one down on the 3rd row, Mr. Biasati. So I go to see him and we chat, yes, at 20, we do want the 20,000 pairs and can you get us a better price? And I'm saying, yes, I'll get you a better price, we can do that. Okay, so that was solidified and I thought, okay, the size of this company and we're very small, I'll get 20,000 pairs out of it, but it might be my first and last order because I got to satisfy whatever piece of equipment they give us, whatever size of stand they decide to give to Reebok. If it doesn't turn over enough profit on that piece of estate, that will be it.
Yeah.
They'll say, no, we're not going any further with that one. So I go to Boston and I meet with Paul Feynman and his crew, and they've got about 10 people there with the office and salesmen. I think, this is about my size. this would be nice. They could build Reebok onto this and it would be brilliant. So I went back to home, back to Bolton, and the last week of July, that's when the shoe magazine comes out. Runner's World Shoe Magazine edition. It's the August edition. And I decided I'd phone Paul Feynman. And I said, Paul, can you go down to the local kiosk, see if the magazine's out, and see how we did? Because
you need to know,
we need to know if we've got 5 stars.
It's a make or break.
That's right. So we're all a bit sort of on tenterhooks, wondering. He came back about an hour later and said, Joe, Aztec was our sneaker, our trainer. You got 5 stars. Brilliant. He said, but not only that, your spike track shoe, which was called Inca, and And the racing shoe, we had a racing shoe called Midas. They've also got 5 stars.
Nice.
Suddenly, we have credentials. Suddenly, we have demand.
Yep.
And
that's what kicked it off.
got us into America.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the story's out there in the public domain. So I want to ask a couple more questions about, just motivation and mentality in general. But obviously from that point, you went on, got into the American market. A lot of things may have happened, but eventually Adidas purchased Reebok. That's correct?
It is correct, yes.
Yeah. So Adidas purchased Reebok for a couple $1 billion, which is an incredible feat just in terms of building a brand and selling it off to someone who was once a competitor.
Yes.
Yeah. So Joe, at the time, when you were kind of going through the build up of Reebok, you were working closely with your brother.
Yeah.
A lot of people have concerns when they get into, startups or company building and things of that nature, that it's kind of high stakes environment, a lot of emotions going around the room, not to get into business with family.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think your relationship with your brother changed throughout the years of working with him?
Well, I think, and I touched on this earlier, the fortunate thing for us was we had our parents, my father and uncle, we had them as a good example of what not to be like. Could we work together? And I think that's probably why we decided, Jeff, you look after the factory. I'll do the sales, the marketing, and whatever it takes to see if we can scale this company to a certain size, and if we can do. And so because of that, we never had a bad word. I mean, it's hard to believe, I know. I must have done some terrible things and lousy things. I mean, because I was spending the money, I was doing the trips, I was doing stuff that didn't work. I mean,
you were testing.
Yeah,
he was building, you were testing.
It took me 11 years to get into America, but no, Jeff didn't. He didn't flinch. He stayed with it, and we never had bad words. So that was, in a sense, okay. I understand the fact that working with family, don't work with family, don't work with friends. You can make friends out of a working partner, but don't start a business with friends. Yeah. And even family can be a big risk, although, a lot of families have traditionally handed down the business.
Yes.
But we didn't do that because we didn't keep the foster business.
That's
in
true.
fact, it was 2 years after we started that we actually bought the business into Reebok. So yeah, it's a challenge, and I guess maybe because we were lucky, we did get lucky. We got that 5 stars, and I think that was hard graft to get that 5 stars. 11 years was hard graft, but we'd only been in America a short while when one of our salespeople in LA, he bumped into aerobics. And, we'd always look for white space because, as I say, Adidas owned the football in the UK. We couldn't go there, so we went to other places. And part of the athletics, we went to cross country, we went to fell running, and we went to rugby league. All these were part of the north of England, something we could get to, something we didn't have we didn't have to travel a long way, and we could be with them. So, and that personal touch helped us build. So we look for white space. But in America, our guy in Los Angeles bumped into aerobics. And we were a $9 million company in athletics, growing nicely, when Arnold came up with aerobics. Yeah. He went to see it. His wife, Frankie, was sort of taking part in it. And that took us, because we actually moved into it, we actually pivoted from being a small running company into a woman's fitness company. But that took us from 9 million to 900 million. We didn't grow slow. We didn't need 11 years then. Yeah. From 900 million in 4 years. And that put Reebok on the map. Absolutely. Globally. And that's where the brand really took off with women. Interesting. So, if we possibly hadn't had that success, maybe the family side of it would have got a bit too tired, a bit too difficult. Although we'd got the 5 stars, just got into America, when unfortunately Jeff got cancer and died. Sorry to hear. Didn't see the success. He'd gone through with me those 11 years plus of
Yeah.
slog to try and get there. Didn't get the success. Took me 3 people to replace him.
Of course, yeah.
But I mean, in the saddest of ways, it allowed me to make decisions without having to talk to anybody.
I suppose like the iteration would have been more rapid. But like, how do you feel about that? Him not being around to see it.
I feel very sad, but I also know that somewhere along here it would have been different. Whether we'd have gone down the path, I had to make decisions which maybe between us we would have sat down there and not bothered to do that. I don't know. So it's always one of those things. It's a torment both ways.
Yeah.
I just wish he'd still been around to see the success.
For sure.
But you can't turn anything back. And people say, "What do you regret?" The only thing I regret is the fact that Jeff's not. Well, whether he would still be here today, he'd be 91.
Yeah.
So whether he'd still be here, but it's so regrettable he didn't see that success that we did have.
Definitely. Well, thanks for sharing that. I do appreciate it. I want to ask a couple more questions and then we can wrap it up. But regarding like your why, like what gets you out of bed in the morning, what motivates you to like get out of bed and like actively continue trying failure after failure, etc. How did that change? Like your why change from when you were young, working hard with your brother, going through all these failed iterations to, I suppose like a moment where you sold the company. You probably were fairly financially fit from that point onwards, but then you continued to like, be involved and do things with your life. So I'm curious.
I'll give you a big answer, but the immediate answer is nobody told me to stop.
Yeah.
And unless somebody tells you to stop, why would you want to stop? I backed out of Reebok when I was 55, and the company was 3 to 5 billion size, mainly because I was going to say the adventure had gone, the challenge had gone. Right? We'd started off. After 18 months, we had to change our name. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
After 4 years, we had to change our silhouette because I just didn't like what we got a better silhouette. So we learned that challenges are opportunities. And so we turned everything into an opportunity. How can we turn this to an opportunity? What can we do? So that excitement, all that had gone. We're big now. We're corporate. We've got accountants. We've got lawyers. We've got lots of people doing lots of things. And all I'm doing is more or less being an ambassador.
Yeah.
I'm flying around either first class or club class, and I'm arriving at wherever I arrive and being met by a limousine, being taken to the best hotels. We go out and we have meals at the best restaurants, and I'm just talking to people. And because at that size of business, you need a whole team of designers. And so you can't personally put your stamp on anything.
Yeah.
You have to build the right team, make sure that they are Reebok through and through. And but once you get to a certain size, I say it becomes corporate.
Yeah, for sure.
So for me, it was backing away from day to day. But then I sort of sat back. When I left in 1990, we didn't have computers. We didn't have smartphones.
Yeah.
When I'm sitting back in Tenerife and enjoying life, we get computers, we get smartphones, we get Google, we get Wikipedia.
Yeah.
And they're telling me how Reebok started. And there was even a photograph of Joe Foster.
Yeah.
His name might be Joe Foster, it certainly wasn't me. And this was the founder of Reebok. So that's what inspired the book.
Yeah.
And having written the book, which was just to put the story straight, some guys in the universities picked this up and coming back to me and saying, "Joe, this is a business book. This is saying what you did and how you did it. Would you come and talk to us?" So that's how it started.
Yeah.
And from then on, and we've not stopped. And until somebody says stop, or too many people know the story and they get fed up with the story or whatever it is, we just keep going.
Yes.
And that's the inspiration now. It's like, why not?
Absolutely. I mean, it's an incredible story. Just like shows the importance of resilience, in overcoming failures and continuing to, move forward regardless. I want to read you a quote and get your opinion on it. So the CEO of NVIDIA, $3 trillion market cap company, said, "Resilience matters in success. I don't know how to teach it to you, except I hope suffering happens to you. Greatness comes from character, and character is formed out of suffering." Do you agree?
Yeah, I suppose you can interpret suffering in many ways. I think it's hardship much more than suffering, because suffering can be something that...
Of course.
Hardship, yeah, you can suffer hardship. I'll grant that. So, and I think, yes, you do, and it builds resilience. You need a couple of smacks somewhere, and you need to understand that it's not there on a plate. First thing you have to do is to build a plate. There's so many things you've got to look after and be willing, no matter how good things are, willing to go back there again. Okay, we've got to check this one out. So I think his statement is pretty good. I think he's right that you don't really get there until you've known rock bottom. It's difficult to climb the mountain. Yeah.
And I'm assuming you would have experienced your fair share of moments in terms of feeling as if you're at rock bottom. How did you remind yourself to continue in those situations?
Well, people ask me what's the most important thing about running a business and really scaling a business. And I say, having fun. Okay, we fell off, but we love that climb. We're going to go back again. Yeah, we're having fun. And I think if you, not every day is fun. Like you say, some days are pretty miserable. But I think really it is to do with having fun. If you can have fun, enjoy your life. Okay, whatever business you're in, you've got to know it. You've got to know it right from before A and after Z. You've got to know everything and plus.
Yeah.
And that helps. If you don't know that, when I was selling my product, nobody could ask me a question about shoemaking, or tell me about shoemaking that I didn't know. No, we had to know everything, and we knew the next step. So you need that, but essentially you've got to enjoy that. If you don't enjoy it, if you don't have fun, it's going to be tough.
I think one of the most interesting things you've said to me today is the notion of, or your reflection on how you felt going through it versus being at the end of it, and saying to me that you really did enjoy the moments of challenge more than you did the outcome. It's just, I feel like, a very powerful thing to say, because it's a reminder to everybody who's going through it that you're in the best moments. So enjoy it, because the challenge is enjoyable. Absolutely. It should be enjoyable. Yeah.
To travel is better than arriving.
That's right.
And that's it. The journey is always better than I've arrived. What do I do next?
Yeah.
I want to do the journey again.
That's it. Yeah.
Which, if we read Shoe Dog,
yes,
this is exactly what Phil Knight said.
Yeah.
I'd like to do it all again.
Because it's the fun moments. Yeah.
He must have had. And I lost a daughter. He lost a son. And those moments you just think, was it my fault? Was I not there enough? Did I give somebody too much money? Did they have too much easy life? I don't know. These things are like Jeff dying. It's an imponderable. You just can't. You just can't take it on. You just wish these things hadn't happened. Nothing you can do about it. Yeah. But it doesn't mean to say that you've got to hate yourself or destroy what you've enjoyed. And now I enjoy traveling now. Yeah. Okay. Getting on a bit these days, and I go through, as most people will go through, a few difficult patches in life.
Of course.
But it's fun.
Yeah, definitely. Joe, one last question for you before we wrap up. If you could go back in time and speak to your former self, let's say the 18-year-old Joe, what would you tell him?
I would tell him to have fun. Remember, have fun. And remember, it's not going to be easy. And to quote from Harry Potter, do the right things, not the easy things.
Interesting. All right, Joe, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks so much for coming on. I do appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Yes, and good luck with wherever you're going.
For sure. Thank you so much. Thank you. Easy.
Excellent.
If you like this studio, you like this podcast and the space that we're in, Or if you're seeking a dynamic and collaborative environment to fuel your success, don't miss out on Melbourne Connect Co-working.
They are now offering an incredible 25% discount on 12-month memberships when you quote ambition in your inquiry. Follow the links in the description to learn more.